Me off. Great to have you guys here. This is Office Hours. I decided to start 15 minutes early as I was ready, and here I am. So, with our extra 15 minutes here at the beginning, let's talk about some things that you'd like to learn. So, I know we got Jesse in the chat. Great to have you. If anyone else is joining in, feel free to sound off in the chat. If you're watching this in the future, feel free to leave a comment. And I'm curious what you would like to learn. And even if you're watching this in the future, I'd love to know what you'd like to learn, as that could help make new videos or make new topics for these live streams. So, hi. Wait, I gotta do the dab right. Let's see. I can't fail this week. Did it. I did it. I'm so proud of myself. And welcome in if you've just joined us. I'm doing fantastic. I've just finished over the last couple days getting my favorite series to digital, Sword Art Online. Yes, I know I could just have a Crunchyroll subscription, but I bought this. It was like so much money to get everything they've ever made on Sword Art Online. The only thing that I don't have, and I just found out about, which is just kind of like, oh my goodness, is they just did Gun Gale Alternative Season 2, which is these two here is the first bit, Season 1. Now I want Season 2, and I am dying for the Blu-rays to come out because I don't want to go get a subscription, although I'm thinking about it just so I can watch that season. So yeah, but if you didn't already know this, I am so heavily invested in VR because I love Sword Art Online, so this is my most prized collection of movies. And looks like we've got Sandy has joined the chat. Great to have you, Sandy. Happy Friday. And yes, today's great. Hope everyone's staying safe as well. And one thing that I thought we could work on, if nobody has any questions or thoughts, is NPCs that play your game by themselves. It's way harder than it sounds. I've already been working on it for like pretty much this whole week. Maybe longer if you count the first tutorial. And I think we worked on it a little bit last week, but it's getting closer. Oh, and Jeff is here. Hey, Jeff. If you die in VR, you die in real life. No! That's the only aspect I don't want included in real life, okay? I'm here for the day I can plug my brain into the virtual metaverse and taste and touch and so much more. I want to whip my hair back and forth. You know, that hair I don't have? And I just want to feel it whip me in the face and I go, oh man, that hurts. Why did I think that was fun? Like, that's the sort of VR experience I can't wait for. And even, honestly, even getting hurt would be kind of fun. Like, I feel like if you know your body's not getting hurt and you're getting, like, cut and it's like, oh, that hurts, but, like, maybe it's toned down, you know, like 1%. That could be really fun. Oh, anyway, so Jeff says, I thought about making the full dive loading scene in actual VR. Yeah, that'd be amazing. Are you going to get on VR or computer? I am all about the computer, which is why I have it right here. And yeah, I hate to say that, but yeah, these days it's all about the computer. So let's go ahead and create our new Office Hours world, starting from blank world. Interesting. I like this. I like this update. This is new this week. When you go to create it, it has advanced settings and it's now default custom model import. In the past, it was default primitives. I'm so happy they've defaulted to custom model import because we've all been custom model import, or should be, for the last year now. So that's great news. And blank world name is today's date, Office Hours 2025-01-31, last day of the month. And for those who don't know, today marks our 4-year anniversary of making tutorials on YouTube. So, confetti. Pretty exciting. Well, welcome in Moki's world. Great to have you. When will you play on your VR? That's a hard question to answer. I'm hoping any day now, but I'm trying to finish this world up so I can play it. I thought about making the full... Oh yeah, we already read that. Cool. Hello, Moki's world. And so, here we are in our Office Hours world. So any questions you have, feel free to bring them in. And the way that I'm rolling Office Hours is if you don't ask questions, I'm just going to go do my day job, basically, and just work. And then if you have questions about what you see me doing, you can ask those questions. But yeah, the reason I'm not in VR is because I'm building this world and I can't go play it until I'm finished building it. And that's kind of where I'm at. Sandy says, congrats. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, 4 years is huge. I can't believe it myself. I remember I was sitting in an airport around 4 years ago, plus or minus a day, recording the first tutorial. And then I was like, I was telling my parents, I was like, I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to make a tutorial. They're like, okay, whatever you say. And now here it is, kind of my real life job. I think they're just as surprised as I am. So that's kind of cool. Just for funsies, I'm in the world I'm working in. There's these player settings, and only the world creator can change them. So let's quickly run through them. Maximum player count is great, 32. That's fun. I usually recommend 16. I think 16 is probably the right amount. If you're a smaller world, that's not a bad thing. There's definitely a place for that. And then I recommend increasing your suggested minimum player count to match so full 100% of whatever your maximum player count is. This just means that you want your world to be filled, and your world is best when filled. So if it is set to like 1, that's telling the Horizon algorithm that it's a great world for just 1 player, so it might not recommend it as much. So I think this is the way to go. I don't know if they even use that in the algorithm anymore, but it was used a couple years back. Don't touch the VoIP settings. That's for when you're in build mode. I always leave that at global so everyone can hear each other when they're in build mode. Emotes and emotes audio, please leave those on. I hate when people turn them off in the worlds. It drives me nuts because then I can't use what I feel like are my hands, and it just feels like I've lost a piece of myself. Like a way that I communicate is using emoticons, and the audio is also very helpful. So please leave those on for people like me who need it. Can hands collide with physical objects? That's, for the most part, I recommend leaving that on. It's like if you walk up to an object, can your hand go through it? Static objects, I recommend leaving that off unless your game requires that sort of interaction, but it can cause some weird oddities. Custom player movement is the one I wanted to turn on because I thought that one would be fun to play with. Generate instant replays, don't need that. Frame budget boost, I leave this on default. You could turn it on, but it can cause distortions, so I'm just leaving my worlds on default. Spawn nearby, I haven't had a chance to try this, but it says it allows players to spawn near other players when joining a session. That sounds so cool. If you're like a hangout world, that sounds perfect, but if you're a game world, you probably don't want to change that. Footstep volume, I'm pretty sure none of this is being used. I wish it was, because in certain horror games, this would be fantastic for detecting people. I usually have to write the code in myself to make this happen. I hope at some point it gets implemented again. Like off by default, but then you turn it on if you want it. Hide action buttons by default, I recommend turning on. This is when you're on mobile, all the buttons are visible by default when you grab a grabbable object, but if you turn them off by default, you have to enable them by going to the properties panel and then turning on or selecting the icon that you want to be displayed. Dynamic levels of detail. Opt out of that. You definitely want levels of detail on. Now this is what creates those weird awkward hands that users can have and other oddities, but unless you're doing like a 4-player world, the levels of detail is going to make it so your world actually is performant and actually, hits 60 FPS or 70 FPS. Enable max quality avatar. That's cool. But for a 4-player world, right? Like a world where your whole experience is about being next to players, and you're not going to do like a social experience where you need 8 to 16 or 30 players. Okay, cool. Those are player settings. Thought that'd be kind of fun to run through. Checking out the chat, guys. Let's see. I'm gonna bounce back over to my camera so you can see me. And we got Jesse says, okay. Human says, wait, are you building a world on your PC? Yes, you can do that. There's a couple requirements, but yeah, for the most part, yes, you can. What is your favorite color? I love all colors. This guy ran out of batteries. I am really disappointed. So I like it on the fade mode, but you can change it. And if I had to choose a color, I would choose like purple or somewhere in that range. Now it's gonna just turn off, which I'm pretty sure is the battery being dead. That or my daughter, she was slamming on it, so it could have just been a loose wire. I'm surprised it's not off yet. We'll see how long that lasts. No, unfortunately it's not on Mac. If you talk to anybody at Meta when you're in your onboarding process, ask them to make it for Mac, please. It's really frustrating that you can't do this on Mac. I am a Mac person, so I have a Mac over here, I've got a Mac over there, and then I've got my Windows desktop, which I can't take with me. which is really quite a question because I'm leaving in about 4 weeks and I'll be gone for about 6 weeks, and I'm planning to bring my Mac, and I'm just not going to be able to do the same sort of live stream. There's going to be a lot of limitations, so I'm not really sure how these lessons are going to work, because it might be mostly coding, it might be through custom model import, but I won't be able to show Horizon. So I'm still thinking that one through. To get access to the desktop editor, in the description there's a link to apply to the MHCP. You do need to be in, I believe it's the US, Canada, Australia, UK. Those are the 4 countries, and then you got to be 18 or older. I have asked, I don't think they're working on it, but I'm at least making noise that we would like a, like a teen program for people who are under 18 to be able to use these tools and just not have access to the monetization stuff. Fingers crossed they take that seriously. We'll see what happens. Okay, but yeah, you have to be on a Windows, and then once you're on Windows, you can open up the MetaQuest Link app, which is what you use for running the Airlink or the Rift software. And then from there, you can open up in desktop mode, which leads you here. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so I thought, since we have enabled custom player movement, and if you've just joined us, remember you can ask any questions you'd like in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. We're going to try building a really quick script here. I just saw Buho arrived. He says, "Sup all, I have a script that runs through fading colors, really useful for decor." That's awesome. I love those scripts. That is fantastic. And so we're going to take this trigger, and I recommend creating a visual location so you can see where your trigger is. To do that easily, we just go and pull out a shape, go pull out a cube, and then copy the position of the trigger. Copy position, select, and paste position. Now that matches it up. I like to then scale it down to be the right size, and then grab the slide tool, slide that down. After you've used the desktop editor for a while, this stuff becomes pretty easy. And so what I thought would be really fun to build is just a simple script. And if you're learning TypeScript, which I recommend you start doing if you haven't already, doing simple things that are like do a thing, causes a thing to happen is a great way to get started. And so we're going to call this the jump trigger. And because this is running on a trigger which is of type entity, I'm going to call it entity afterwards, entity. That tells me what I need to attach this script to, or if it does need to be attached at all. And so then I can click on the trigger, scrolling to the bottom, and then attach the jump trigger script. We can then hit the 3 dots, open an external editor to get that in VS Code. And I need to check that this is actually coming through correctly, because I accidentally closed OBS. Let me reopen that. Looks like we are good. Let me square that up on the screen. Nice. Okay, so here we are in VS Code, which is where we do all our coding. I don't like importing via HZ dots, so I delete that. And then I delete the HZ in dot. I then backspace the T, retype the T, and click Enter to explicitly import component, pressing Control S to save. And so building a simple script like this is pretty awesome because it's going to allow you to learn some basics. And so the first thing we want to do is think about when the trigger is entered by a player. And so I'll write player enter trigger. I think that's what it is. And then parentheses, and then there's a player parameter. So I have to type player, curly braces. I also have to type enter when I'm typing player. So I'll retype that and click enter. And then we need to receive player enter trigger. To get that, we need to use pre-start. You could use start, but it's not recommended. You really want to use pre-start for any time you're connecting events. And so then we type connect code block event, parentheses. We're going to connect this from self because this script runs on a trigger. So this dot entity code block events dot trigger player enter trigger. There it is, on player enter trigger. And then I try to get my local methods to match the event names. And so player enter trigger matches on player enter trigger. It's just lacking the on. And then we use camel case, which is where it starts lowercase. Now to get this to be received, we then have to create an arrow function. So parentheses, that's where the player parameter comes from. Then arrow function to the right, curly braces, and then everything in the curly braces is what's going to be run. So then we call the local method player enter trigger by typing this dot player enter trigger, and then parentheses again to call it, and then we pass the player parameter in those parentheses. I like semicolons, so I add a semicolon here and a semicolon there. And now we have said whenever a player enters this trigger, we're going to call this method here. And then the next thing we want to do is make the player go up because this is a jump trigger. And so what we just type is player dot apply force parentheses, and then we want to do vec3 dot up. Now that's going to result in a 0, 1, 0 vector, so it's not going to give that much force. But if we do dot multiply, we can multiply that by whatever we want it to be. And so we can say, let's make them jump 10. Well, let's see what 10 does. I don't know what it does, but we're going to find out. And so that's going to go ahead and compile. You'll see it turns yellow, then blue, and then it disappears. The console will also show you status updates. I'd like to clear those out before I play the world. We'll then hit play, jump into preview mode. Here we are. And now if I walk onto this, hey, that's what a 10 jump looks like. And you could imagine making a Super Mario game using something like that. Oh, and if I jump at the same time, I get like a double jump. Oh, that's awesome. So if I walk into it, not as high, like pretty high, but not as high as when I jump. Oh, that's so cool. That is already like a fun game mechanic. Love that. All right, let's see what the chat has to say. Hey guys, let me take a quick peek. All right, we left off with Buho joining. He's talking about the changing colors. Everybody, let's click the like. Yes, thank you, Sandy. Appreciate that. Love it. Buho says, I need a custom CP. A CP that can, a computer, a PC maybe, that can run this so bad. That looks so quick. I'm getting okay with code blocks, but that's just another level. And the best part about this, Buho, is that you can just copy and paste. So if I'm going to give you this script at the end of today's class, and you can just go bring that into your world. You don't have to write it again. You can just take it. It's like the best version of asset sharing. Moki says, nice. Glad you like it, Moki. And Buho says, so this .entity code is starting what is to script. Is that like setting everything to objects and variables? Let's quickly look at that script one more time and talk a bit about what we're seeing here. You can collapse the left hand by doing this, and it just reopens when you click it again. This is where all your scripts are listed out, so I'm just collapsing that for now. So the first line is our import line. This line creates the script. So this is like a code block script in that it can be attached to an entity. Entity is the word we use to mean object. Sorry, I got a text message I need to reply to. My maintenance guy is trying to fix our electrical. Is your car charging rated for 50 or 40 amps? I'm not sure. Sorry about that. Okay, so an entity is the new term that we use instead of the word object. So code blocks we use object, but everything that was an object is now an entity in TypeScript. And that's because the word object has a completely different meaning in TypeScript. There's the properties panel. This is like the variables tab in code blocks. And so this is how you define the properties on the properties panel. So prop stands for properties. So properties definition is where you define them. Then we have pre-start, which is a new thing that this happens guaranteed before the world start event. And so you want to do all your connecting of events before the world starts. That's why we do that here. Then we have our start event, which is just the same as when world is started. Player enter trigger is just the same as the trigger is entered by player code block. And then apply force is similar to, if you go to the motion tab, there's like apply force to player or something like that. And then you put a vector in. So vector 3 just means it has 3 properties, x, y, and z. Vector.up gives you a 0, 1, 0 vector, which you can then multiply, which is the same as the multiply symbol from the operators tab, by 10. So that just multiplies by 10. And then lastly, we have this connecting code block event. And so this is very similar to the connect to that's at the bottom of the events tab in code blocks. You just normally don't have to do this. Normally this would have been connected for you in code blocks if you were attached to a trigger, but they're not. They don't do that. So you have to manually connect the trigger enter event. So by saying this dot entity, you're referring to self. So the self pill that you would have gotten inside of code blocks. And then code block events is a drop-down list for every event. And so you might remember in code blocks, you can get a list when you click on that drop-down, but here you have to type code block events with an S and then hit period, and you get that same drop-down list with all the pre-built event names. And so then we can do trigger, which will give us all the things related to a trigger, and we'll grab on player enter trigger. And then this is called an arrow function. This is something that just kind of like magic. I recommend just remembering it and doing it. But more or less, When you hover over player entered trigger, you'll see that it has the property entered by, that's the parameter. And so inside the parentheses, we need a player. And you can hover over that to see that it's of type player. And then this dot player enter trigger, this references the local method. So this is self. So it's saying self, on self, I have an event or a method called player enter trigger. And then you need to pass the parameter, which is the player, and that's going to call this event. And the biggest difference between code blocks and TypeScript is this happens instantaneously. When you send an event in code blocks, it takes 1/10 of a second, so 0.1 seconds or 100 milliseconds. That is a long time, but in TypeScript, it is instant. No milliseconds, 0 milliseconds, it just happens. And so, anyway, that's a much deeper topic, so we won't be getting into that right now. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions about any of that. Be happy to dive deeper on any of those questions, any of those things. All right, so in the chat, we've got Moki saying maybe later explain sub-levels a little. Are you talking about like sub-level streaming, world streaming? Let me know if that's what you mean. Let me see, I'm writing down world streaming in case that is what it means, world streaming. And Milky says, got 14 hours left on the 17-hour video. Okay, sounds good. Boo says, you're doing cool blocks, you're doing cool blocks definitely helps me. Oh, code blocks definitely helped me be able to read this. Awesome, awesome. This is self, I see. Yes, yes. So it's like self. Self is specifically like an entity or object. And so this is like the whole entire script. This means the whole script thing. It's like everything that's inside of it. So you can have like properties, you can have methods, which is an event. We used to call those events, we now call them methods. Or functions is another name you might hear me like interplay there. And then you'll also be able to get a property. And a property of a script is that it can reference the object that's running that script, which is this dot entity. So that gets self. So, yep. Awesome, awesome. Okay. That was fun, and I think it would be really cool to see this taken up a level, because if we group these together, let's see, convert to group selection, there we go, and then we're going to call this jump pad, and then let's go and take this jump pad, right click, create asset. I'm going to just throw this in my assets folder, which is a terrible thing to do, but we're just going to call this jump pad, and we're going to do something cool. So one thing that I learned in the last few weeks is that you can, maybe it's been a month or two, but it's relatively new to me, is that when you have an asset spawn in the world, you no longer need to have the script inside the asset. You can just, we'll delete this, and we're going to spawn that in, and it will automatically link up with this trigger script, which is so cool. You probably have already discovered this if you've been doing asset spawning, but I kind of didn't touch it for a year because it was kind of, you know, not always safe. You know, it broke frequently in the past, so I was being cautious, but it seems safe again. So I've got this empty object, which we're going to call the jump pad manager, and then I'm going to move this to 0, 0, 0. It's like the place I like to move all my junk, and then we need to attach a script, but we need to create that script. So we're going to go create a new script called jump pad underscore jump pad manager underscore entity. There we go. And because it says underscore entity, that tells me that it needs to be attached to an object, which is this invisible cube that we've created here. So I'll go down to drop down, attach the jump pad manager. And now with that script attached, we can then go into that script, so 3 dots, open an external editor, and we can make modifications. Now what's really cool is if you go into this script and make a modification, it changes the script that's running on the asset. So we can now say, let's do math.random to get a random number. Now this returns a random number between 0 and 1 with decimals. We can then multiply that by, let's say, 5. And then let's add 5 to this. So there's a guaranteed jump of 5, but then there's a randomness at the very end for the last 5. So you might get a bigger jump from time to time. Cool. So the average jump will be slightly smaller. Very nice. Now on our jump pad manager, we need to know about the asset. And I'm going to first start by clearing my script up just like I did before by deleting all the HZ dots. This is my personal preference. I do recommend adopting this preference, but everyone has their own differences. So depending on who your teacher is, they'll tell you to do the exact opposite. So it's a personal choice. And then in properties, so what you'll see I did here is I clicked inside of the curly braces, clicked enter, and now we can define a property in the properties panel, which would be the asset. And normally this is how I would define an asset. So let's demonstrate it. So we'd say asset colon, and then curly braces, props, or excuse me, type colon, and then prop types dot asset. And this is how you generally create a property. And then if we go to the script inside of Horizon on the properties panel, you'll see once this is finished compiling that it has attached a new property below the script right here for asset. Now, the reason I don't do that anymore for assets is because assets have this versioning history, and we want to use the latest version of our asset at all times. And so we're going to create this somewhere else. We could do it in a separate file, but because this is kind of self-contained and will take care of itself, we're going to create it inside of this script itself. And so on line 7, I'm going to create the asset, which we'll call the jump pad asset, and then that will be equal to, and we have to create the asset. So I believe the way to do this, I've only done this a few times, so just bear with me. I think it's new asset parentheses big int parentheses, and I might have this backwards. Asset is going to create an asset, and then this needs a big int. So if we go into our assets folder here, and then click on the asset jump pad that I just created, you can then copy the asset ID. This is also available on Mac, so if you are using the Mac way of doing it, there is a way to do that. Then I can paste that here, and I think I did the wrong big int. Is that it? Yeah, I did the wrong big int. There it is. Okay, so now jump pad asset is of type asset, and it's created this way. So you type new asset, and then big int is going to create a number value, or a big int value. It's basically just a, it's hard to explain, but normal numbers can't be stored like this. So we create what's called a big int to get values that are this large. And int stands for integer, which means it doesn't have decimal places. Anyway, so that's how we create the asset. And this will always be the latest version of that asset, which is what's so cool. Now let's start by spawning this asset somewhere random on the grid. And so we're going to create a new parameter called y_height, which we're going to set to y_height equals 0. And so on start, we're going to say we want to create, I'm going to do this the proper way, and then afterwards I might need to explain a little bit of it, but we're going to create a local method called place jump pad. And so when you call place jump pad, which we'll do on start, so we'll type place jump pad, this happens instantaneously, and it's going to call this method. And so then place jump pad, we need to calculate a location. And to do that, we're going to say constant placement location equals new vec3 parentheses. Now we need to provide 3 numbers, x, y, and z. And so x, I'm just going to put a 0 in for now. Y, we're going to use the y_height value that we have, and that is this dot y_height. You might remember me saying this dot is how you get access to all the variables that you've saved inside of it. So that's where that is. And then we need the z, which we're going to set to 0 as well. Now this would just by default spawn it at 0, 0, 0. So let's change this to be math.random to get a random number. And then I think it would be fun to put these like on snapped locations. And so if we multiply math.random by, let's say, 10, or maybe even 20, we can then put parentheses around that and then call math.floor. Now this is going to return a random integer between 0 and 19. We can then subtract 9? That doesn't make sense. Minus 10 would be from -10 to positive. I guess if we want to be inclusive, we need to go to 21. So we say then minus 10. That'll give us a random number between -10 and +10. and then we can copy paste this math.floor. But I'd rather create a function that we can call so that we don't have to do this twice in case we want to change the math later. And so outside of this class, we can create what are called functions. And this is going to be called get random, get random, sure. It's a terrible name, but it will do what we need it to do. And so get random needs to return a value. To give it a return, which is something we don't have an equivalent to in code blocks, we type colon and then number. And this is going to say that if you call get random, you will receive a number. And so if I type return and then I paste this code that we copied up here, math.floor math.random times 21 minus 10, this will return a number between -10 and +10. Now, what I think would be good is to make it so that we can vary this. So let's go ahead and take a, I'll call it radius for now. It's not a great name because it's not a circle, but anyway. We're going to take this radius and use that to determine that we want it to be 10. So we're going to replace 10 with radius. And then we're going to multiply this by parentheses. And then we get the radius times 2 plus 1. And that will return our 21 that we had before. So radius times 2 plus 1. Order of operations will take effect there, but I like to put parentheses so it's very, very clear. And then now we can replace this whole line here with a very simple get random, oops, Control Z, get random, parentheses, and then pass the number 10, and that will return the number that is between -10 and +10. Control C. Do that for 0, and now that is going to create a placement position that is somewhere randomly placed on the grid between -10, +10 on both X and Z. And now to place the jump pad at that position, we now need to spawn the asset, and I'm not really sure if I remember how to do this. It would be this.world.spawn asset. Oh, cool. Memory served me well. And then we can, after typing this.world.spawn asset, we can provide the asset we want to spawn, which is the jump pad asset. So we'll type jump pad asset. We need to provide the position, which is the placement position. The rotation we're going to leave at 0, 0, 0. So we'll type quaternion.1. And quaternion.1 returns a rotation of 0, 0, 0. That's super confusing. You just have to remember it. Quaternion.0 does not return a quaternion 0. Very confusing. I'm so sorry. And also quaternion means rotation in TypeScript. So just for reference. Okay, that's going to spawn the asset, and semicolon because I like semicolons. Control save. Let's go ahead and see if this spawns a jump pad into the world like we hope it will. So, console, clear, and play. And look at that, there it is, right there. And if I jump into preview mode, I should have been able to see that, but I think it's too low below the ground. Let me go back into build mode, hit play one more time. And then look below the ground. Ah, there it is. And this is what I was telling you about updating the asset. So if we'd reference the asset on the object by dragging and dropping it over, like just drag it from here over to here, you couldn't do what I'm about to do. And so what we can do here is right click and click Edit Template Definition. This allows us to change the asset in this kind of like cool build mode area. And what we need to do is make sure that the trigger goes to the very bottom. No, is that right? What do we want to do? We want to drag this one up maybe? Drag this one up so that it's visible. Oh, you know what we need to do? Control Z. I like this whole thing. So if I hit Control D, I can drag this down and turn off the visibility and collidability and the reflecting light and shadow. And now that creates the center point right here in the middle of this. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit save. And then hit save and publish, and that's going to publish it to our world so that we can just immediately start using it in our script. And so now when I hit play world, it should spawn in the corrected one with the, maybe hit stop and play one more time, stop and play. There it is, and you can see it's now above the grid. Very nice. And if we jump into world, we can walk over there, and it works with the new script, which is now random, so you get a just kind of different amount of jumping. And then we can double jump by hitting the space bar as we jump, which is very, very cool. Or if you're in VR, hitting the jump button. Okay, so that's a pretty cool script. Let me check the chat, guys, and see what you're saying. Hi, everyone. If you've just joined us, this is Laex05's Office Hours. You can leave questions in the chat, and I will answer them. It can be about TypeScript, code blocks, 3D modeling, mostly custom model importing. I don't do the modeling side itself. Let's see here. Looks like everyone is just interested. Cool. But yeah, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, guys. I like the example, Great Blueprint. Fantastic. So glad that that was helpful. I'm going to take this one step further though, because we can make this into a game. And so we are placing a jump pad one time. What if we place the jump pad on repeat? Check this out. We call, let's say, for parentheses, let I equal 0. And then we say, while I is less than 10, I plus plus. And what this does is it's very similar to a while loop, but it has a variable called I, which lets us know how many times we've run the loop. And so it starts at 0. We increment it by 1. I plus plus means plus 1 every time this runs. So it starts at 0, then it goes up, and once it reaches 10, it stops running. And so we can then move this into our for loop, and check this out. We're now going to get 10 of these pads placed on the ground randomly. Give that a second to compile. It goes orange, it goes blue, console logging, clicking clear one more time, and clear, and play, and poof, there are 10 assets spawned into the world. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's take that one step further. If we go into our for loop and then say y height plus equals, this will increase the y height by, let's say, 3 meters. So every time this loop runs, the jump pad gets placed 3 meters higher. Control save. And theoretically, we've just created like an upwards parkour course. So give that a second. Clear, clear one more time, and clear, play. And there they are. So now we've got this kind of course. I don't see the one on the ground because I realized I made a slight mistake, although that's a really cool course. The slight mistake is that this needs to happen afterwards, so we need to move this down and move this up. So we place the jump pad, then we increase the y height. Control save, and let's go ahead and give that a shot. Give that a second to compile. Checking the chat while it's compiling. No way, and you have not been to Tech House in Meta Horizons. That is the mechanic on the dance floor that they have. It's an EDM club, except for the spawning of the 10 different ones. It's just one big one. Oh yeah, they might have used the one from the asset library that I made and gave away. Or they might have rewritten it themselves, but it's a pretty simple script, so. But there is one for free in the asset library. So if you go into your asset library, check out the interactive section, you can just pull this exact script out. It's just not in TypeScript, it's in code blocks. But yeah, check, oh, that's, ooh, almost. Oh, come on, made it. Oh, very nice. Can't make it. No! Okay, that's a pretty fun minigame. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was way more fun than I thought it was going to be. I am smiling cheek to cheek. Ah! Wow. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, feel free to ask questions if you have any, but I'm going to take it one more step further because we're having fun. What if we want to know who is the player who's been the highest? In that case, we need a leaderboard. And so we go to leaderboards, and we're going to go create one, and we're going to just call this highest jump. Highest jump. And this will be descending. It will not reset. Press create. And then we need to go into our scripts and create a new script. And this one is going to be called the highest jump tracker, and this will need to be run on an entity. We'll go ahead and click enter, and then we're going to put this on another empty object. So we'll go empty object, call this the highest jump tracker manager. There we are. And then we need to attach the script highest jump tracker. There it is. All right, so now this is going to track which players have been the highest. We'll then set this to 0, 0, 0. There we go. And we then also want to pull out a leaderboard gizmo. So we'll go gizmos, find leaderboard, and finding it's the hard part. I think it's this one. There it is. Yep. All right, we're then going to change this. I like it to be in dark mode. I like having 10 on the entries board. and we'll then select the highest jump. I also like to double the scale of this to 222, and then we can change that to be highest highest jump, parentheses, in meters. So we say in meters. And now we have our leaderboard ready to go. We'll slide that forward so you can go and check that out. And then we now need to get this thing working. So to do that, we're going to go to the jump pad manager scripts, and then we can go to the side panel where we'll find the highest jump tracker. And then I like to, as always, delete the HZ dots. Again, that's just a personal preference. And I'll go ahead and delete the HZ and dot, backspace the T, press T again, click enter. And now we need to create some way of tracking this. And the easiest way to do that is to create a loop. And I recommend looping this maybe twice a second, 4 times a second max. So we'll just go ahead and do the 4 times per second. So we say async dot set interval. And this is a way in TypeScript to create something that happens on repeat. It's fantastic. And so we're going to go ahead and type, we need to create an arrow function. So arrow to the right, curly braces. Inside that we call it a loop. And then parentheses, I like semicolons, so I add one. Then comma, and this is how many milliseconds between it. So 250 would be 4 times per second, because that's 250 milliseconds. I like a semicolon, so I add it there. And now the loop is happening 4 times per second. Now, we do need to know about all the players in the world. And in most of my worlds, I have a player list. You can go watch the player data tutorial if you're interested in that. Player data, player stats will teach you all about creating that. So for this demonstration, I'm going to do something I've never used before, which I think is slightly more expensive in terms of performance, but shouldn't be that big of a deal. So if you do actually download this script and use it, no big deal. But you can type this.world.getPlayers to get all of the players that are in the world. I think this also includes avatars, I would imagine. And then with that list of players, we can then type dot for each, and then type parenthesis, parenthesis, and we're creating an arrow function with the player parameter. And this allows us to run code for each player in the world. So then I'll type enter between the curly braces, and then anything in these curly braces is going to happen for each player. And so what we want to do is calculate the height that the player is currently at. And so we'd say constant y height equals player dot position dot get. Now this is going to get the y height, or it's going to get the position of the player, but then we hit dot y. That will then get the y height of the player, so that'll be a number. We can then say this dot world dot, Control Z, dot leaderboards dot set score for player, parentheses. The leaderboard name needs to match. So if I go to the leaderboards, I can make sure that I have the correct name, which is highest jump, capital H, capital J, no spaces. And then in the thing, I'll type highest jump. And then we do comma, and the player is the player that's here. And then the score is the y height that they are currently at. And we do not want to override, so we type false. This means that only higher scores will replace the value. So when you pass this y height in, it checks to make sure that the value inside is either lower if it's going to set it. Okay, so that's it. That's the entire script for tracking the highest jump. And that's going to load in. We can go ahead and give it a shot. See what you guys are saying in the chat. Yeah, my pleasure, guys. And yeah, the script will be available for you to download afterwards too, so you'll be able to get this whole thing. I'll show you that in just a minute. That's a keeper game. Make it a race. Yeah, absolutely, right? Feel free to take this and expand upon it. I would love to see that. All right, so we've created the world. I'm in the world, and you're going to see my leaderboard starts with 1. So I'm at 1 is the default height. We're then going to hit just 1 jump. And now if I walk back over here, we're going to see that update. And I'm not sure if we should be updating the leaderboard 4 times per second. I'm a little nervous about that. It also didn't seem to update, which is strange. I attached the script, hit the jump. Oh, this is one of those things where you have to leave the world and come back? Maybe? Weird there's no error on the console though. Let me check the script and see if I missed something. Async.setInterval for 250 milliseconds, this dot loop, this dot world dot get players dot for each player y height, set leaderboard highest jump. Definitely worked the first time. Set to false because we're not overriding. If true, overrides the previous score, otherwise the previous score is retained. Yes. And everything looks good. Let's try leaving and coming back. Return to creation home. It could also be the 4 times per second is too many. Not entirely sure. We'll see momentarily. I did bring myself a special treat for this class while we wait for that to refresh. Yeah, I can't help it. Totally not something I should do too much of, but so good. Okay. And back in. Let's head on in, see what that says. World is loading. Hoping that's the solution to this leaderboard issue. Console clear, play, and preview. All right, jumping in. My score is 8. Okay, so the leaderboard wasn't updating visually, but it was tracking. So my highest score is now 8. We do have our newest jump pad, and so what I wanted to demonstrate first was that if we jump on this and hit spacebar, we get a higher jump because you can double jump by hitting the spacebar or your jump button in VR. And so we should see that go up. I do think calling it 4 times per second could be a mistake. Let's see if we go higher. I think that was a pretty low jump because it's got that. Ooh, that was way higher. Yeah. Let's see how that did. 8. Come on, show me a bigger number. Yeah, it usually updates in about 4 or 5 seconds. So this seems like it could be the fact that we're calling it too frequently. Let me stop the world and see if it updates. And then hit play. Jump into preview mode. See if that updated. It did not. Stop again. I'm really thinking it's the calling it 4 times per second. So let's change this out. And to do that, we only want to call this part if they actually have a higher jump. And so right here we've calculated the position, but we need to know their most recent highest position. And so we're going to need to create a map. I think that's the best way to go. So we're going to say max height map equals new map. And a map is a way to take a player or any other data and say that represents the key, which is what's going to give you access to the value, which is the V, and the value is a number. And then we just do parentheses afterward to create the map. So we've got this map of players to numbers, and then when we go in here to the loop and we get the y height of the player, we need to know their previous y height. And so we're going to say constant previous max y equals max height map, and max height map dot get parentheses player. And then we've now got their previous max y, or it returns undefined if they don't have one. I like to then do question mark 1 and just call that the base level. And so we're going to either get a 1 or something higher. And then y height is calculated here. I want this to be a whole number because the leaderboard doesn't support partial numbers. And so I'm going to do math.floor to ensure that it's a whole number. And then we can now take and say if parentheses previous max y is less than the current y height, curly braces, that is when we want to update the leaderboard, and simultaneously we need to update the previous max y. And so then we can say max height map dot set to set the value for the player. We then type in the key, which is the player, and then their value is the current y height. And now we've updated their y height and the leaderboard, so it's only updating them if they've actually gone higher. We're checking it 4 times per second, which is totally fine. The problem is if we are updating the leaderboard. Leaderboard updating is definitely something that could slow us down. So let's see if that fixes the issue. And play and preview. So far, no updates. Let's go ahead and jump. I missed the jump. Try that again. And jump. Nice, and jump. Missed it. Might need to expand those triggers. Was that higher though? No. Jump, and that was pretty good. Jump, very good. Jump, and totally missed it, but let's see where we're at. Leaderboard. Hey, there it is, it's at 14. So now it's working. So now we're able to see our previous highest jump, and let's get that higher. Okay, I know I can't make it without a big, big double jump, so, nope, nope, oh! Did I get it? No. I'm gonna try that one more time. That was pretty good though. Jump, jump, jump. Okay, now we need to fall and double jump. There it is. Ooh, there was another place to go. Okay, okay. Oh, no, no, no. Well, let's see. That should be higher than 14 now. It's up to 21. Perfect. All right, that's a cool leaderboard. I guarantee people will have a lot of fun with that. And what's really cool is we could actually go into our jump pad manager and change this number from 10 to, let's say, 1,000. This is going to break. There's no way this doesn't break. 1,000 assets spawning. Yeah, not a good idea. But, hey, let's give it a shot. Clear. And play when that's ready. There it goes. Man, that actually looks like it spawned. How many did it spawn? This is insane. Did it actually spawn 1,000? I can't believe it. Oh my goodness. This is as fast as I can go. I'm going at 10, which is the fastest speed. I'm trying to stay centered. Kind of hard. There we go. Holy smokes. I never would have thought that would work. We're still going. Okay, so it's 1,000 we're 3,000 meters up. The height limit is, the width of this would be 3,000 meters. Can you imagine falling from this height? Oh my gosh, that's insane. That's so insane. I have to go back down now. Okay, I'm gonna look at the chat while I'm flying down. All right, so White Sword says, hi, White Sword, great to have you. And Moki says, I'm running a cell infinite object code block script. It's hard to watch while I'm trying to fly. It's like driving and reading text messages. You just should never do it. I think I'm almost at the bottom though. Almost. Oh, there it is. Okay. Woo! It's crazy. I'm really hoping that didn't affect my leaderboard score. It didn't. Cool, 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 cool. Okay. Milky says, I'm running a cell infinite objects code block script that was derived from your older videos. Could you give an example of TypeScript for selling, buying objects, both objects and assets? Good question. I will come back to that in just a moment. That's a great question. I'm not going to lie. I just really want to try this out. Like, just really, really, really want to try jumping up as high as I can. Okay, here we go. Nope, missed it, missed it. Ah. I think for this to work on another world, you'll have to bring the script in, and then you'll have to create the asset yourself. So just for anyone who's following this and trying to get this implemented. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Ah! I don't think I went higher than 38. Not even close. You'll have to create your own asset for the jump thing and resave it to your asset library and then update the asset ID. Otherwise, you'll get an error on the console that says script isn't found because it's trying to refer to the script in this world, even if it's the exact same script. And I did want to go into the asset because the trigger was not big enough. So stop and then right click and edit template definition. Grab the trigger. That's interesting. Trigger, change the scale of that to 1.2, 1.5, there we go, 1.5 on this one as well, there we go, and save and publish, nice. Okay, this selling thing is an interesting idea. Sell infinite object code block script. I'm trying to wrap my brain around which video this is, what the script is, all that jazz. Oh, is my... No, we're good. Sometimes the video freezes up. I don't know why. Let's see. Selling and buying objects. It's kind of difficult. Okay, I'm thinking of the one from the plant one where you buy and sell. Well, you sell vegetables. I don't think there's a buy. I think there's just selling. We can do that pretty easily. Buying, much harder. So I'll write down both ideas. We have sell veggies, and we have buy stuff, question mark. So that one has a question mark if we can get to it. We have plenty of time, so if nobody asks any other questions, I guess we'll be doing that. But feel free, if you just joined us, to ask questions in the chat. That's what this is. This is office hours. I answer your questions on TypeScript, code blocks, custom model importing, that sort of thing. And Horizon in general. Last week, somebody thought we would answer other questions, but I'm sorry, this is just Horizon. That's just what I know. If I was talking about anything else, I would be the wrong person to answer it. Okay, so to buy and sell things, we have to create some stuff. And so we're going to stick with the simple option, which is like we need to create a variable group. I'll get there when I get there. So we have one created for this class. I'm going to go to owned by me and import the one from our class, which is office hours. There it is. And then we can now create a new player persistent variable. And I recommend, if you're just getting started, to stick to number variables. If you'd like to learn about object variables, which is JSON data, that is in the player data, player stats tutorial. Check that out. That one's fantastic. It's like 2 hours, but it's gold. It's some of the best content I think there is on the topic. So I recommend checking that out. But we're going to stick with number because number is easiest to understand, especially if you're just getting started with TypeScript. So for this number, we're going to create a number called money. Wealth, I don't know. We'll call it money. Sure, money it is. All right, we created money. And now that we have our money variable, we can now utilize that in our scripts. So we're going to need a trigger that you can sell items on. So we're going to create a trigger. And this is going to be our sell trigger. And to know where it is and to be able to use it, we're going to pull out a couple things. The first one is a text object that's going to say sell here. And then we can type break, BR. You're going to love how easy it is to edit text on the desktop editor. Cannot recommend it enough. 180 degrees on the rotation. Change it from auto fit so I can adjust the scale to, let's say, 4. Nice. And then we can change this name to cell text so it's easier to find on our hierarchy. And then let's give it a classic font equals bangers SDF. Boom, nice. And then if you want to go even further, you can do material equals bangers SDF space dash space outline. And there we go. Now we got a nice outline on that. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so we got our cell here trigger set up, and then the last thing I want to do to make this look good is pull out a pedestal, which we'll use a cylinder for. And I want to place this pedestal over here, so I'm going to copy the position of our custom or our leaderboard user interface, paste it here, and then we're going to make that look pretty. So we're going to scale it uniformly using the grayscale, and then we're going to make it taller, and then we're going to scale it again, and taller, and one more time. And then we're going to slide that over to the left, slide that down. Perfect. And then we can select this, and right-click Group Selection. We're then going to call this the Cell Trigger Group. And then we need to paste it at the same position, so we're going to copy the position of this, and then clicking on this, right-clicking to paste position. We can then click F on our keyboard to focus, which will bring us close to it. We can then slide it upwards, and then we can make the whole thing smaller by grabbing the scale tool, grayscaler again, scaling that down, nice, and then drag that into position. Very nice, and right about there. We'll go into preview mode and check it out. All right, looks good. It's hard to read the text, so we should probably make the text bigger. Stop, click on the cell trigger group, F to focus. I'm going to ungroup these now that they're in location, ungroup. And now we're going to move the text up so it's easier to read. I'm also going to change the color to be a fun color. There we go. And enter. Did that work? That did not work. That's weird. Cell text. I changed your color. That should have worked. Visible off, visible on. Ah, there you go. Like what? We'll change that to be a little bit brighter. And visible off, visible on. Okay, there we go. Looking good. So now we got that set up. Now this trigger is designed for objects, which is difficult for mobile and desktop users. I do recommend developing for both platforms if you are developing. But assuming you're just worried about VR users, this is pretty easy to use for a VR user. And so they're just going to put the object in there. So we need to change it from triggering on players to objects. And then we need to create an object that can trigger this. So we're going to go and create another gizmo, or excuse me, another object. Shape. We're going to pull out a sphere. This will be an orange. And then an orange should have some sort of stem or something. So we'll, ooh, the positioning is so crazy when you're in desktop. We'll go ahead and copy the position of this. Copy position and paste. And then we can rotate that by 180 degrees. Nice. Then we'll grab our scale tool. Nice. Stretch that a little bit more. And there we go. Maybe a little bit smaller. Now I'll grab the rotate tool, give it a little bit of rotation so it's a little more organic. And voila, that is going to be our orange. So maybe slide that a little bit to the left. There we go. Now with that created, we'll select it and right click group selection. Now, if you are really interested in scripting on a crazy level, we can create another script which is called color object, and this goes on an entity, and then 3 dots, open an external editor. There is no way to color like you can in primitives with custom model import, but there is something you can do, which is create a property called color, colon, curly braces, type is, prop types dot color, and we'll give it a default of colon color, just Control Z, color dot white. There we go. And that'll start as 111, so we can modify it easily. Oh, I forgot to backspace the T in component. There we go. And now we've got our default color set up, we can utilize that color to recolor. And I do have a color utility script you can download from the assets in the description, but for today, I'll show you manually how to do it, which is to type this dot entity dot as parentheses mesh entity, and then mesh entity has a special property called style. Yep. And then dot tint color dot set parentheses, and then you can type in the props dot color to get the property from the properties panel. And then we're going to do this a couple more times. So Control C, Control V. This one is going to be the brightness, which is going to be a number, which will default to 1. And then we're going to do that one more time, Control C, Control V, but let's first do this one down here, Control C, Control V, change this to brightness, change this from tint color to brightness, and then dot set, and then Control C, Control V, and last property for style is the tint strength. Tint strength, which we're just going to copy that name, Control C, Control V, also default 1, Control C, Control V, Control save. There we go. So that is going to recolor the object. It's pretty cool. Use that quite frequently. So we'll select our orange, go in and select the sphere, and then attach the script called color object, although I should have called it color entity. Now we can select a color. We'll go ahead and select orange, which is going to be no blue, and half yellow, or half green, which creates orange. And then the cone we want to be green, and so we got to attach the same script, which is going to be color object, and then change this from here to 0.1 and 0.2. Should create a nice bright green, maybe darken it a little bit, 0.8. Nice, maybe 0, maybe 0.1, maybe 0.1 there, maybe 0.7. Nice. Okay, that should look good. And now our orange is set up. I totally feel like it needs one more thing, so bear with me. Control C, oops, yeah, Control D to duplicate, and then slide that over, grab my scale tool, scale this like that, scale this like that, and that should create a nice looking leaf, which will then slide into position, down, over. Looks good. Maybe rotate just a hair so it's a little less perfect. And a little bit like that. And then slide that over a little bit to be back in there. Nice. Okay. So that, if I hit play, should look like an orange. Ta-da! Quite nice. It's not bad at all. We can then select that other cone. Let's rotate that just a little bit back the other way. Hit play one more time, stop and play. Nice. And then the green is a little too bright. So if we select this top cone, you'll notice I click to get to the specific item I want. We can then go down to the brightness and adjust that to 0.7, and then hitting refresh, we should see that update to be a little bit darker than the side. Nice. Very cool. Okay, so we got our orange object set up. We're then going to select the whole orange, stopping the world. We now need to give it a tag. So down here we have gameplay tags. We're going to go tag this as sellable. Sellable. You don't want to have too many tags. Just be careful with that. So I recommend just doing the one. And then all items that are sellable will have the sellable. And then we need to make this interactive. So we say motion, interactive. We need to change the scale. So let's grab the scale for the entire group using the grayscaler. Very nice. Now we've got our orange set up. It's got the property of sellable, and we are basically good to go. So now what we need to do is create a script that lets us know when the trigger has been entered by a sellable object. So if we click on the trigger, we can change it to be tagged sellable. Sellable. There we go. And then we're going to go create one more script. So create new script. This will be called the sell trigger underscore entity. There we go. 3 dots, open an external editor. And once again, I don't like this, so I delete it. Backspace HZN dot, backspace HZN dot, backspace T, retype T, click enter. And now we need to find out when the trigger has been entered by an object. So we say trigger enter, object enter trigger. That's what it is. It's object enter trigger, I think. Parentheses, and then there's an entity, which is of type entity, and then curly braces. And so a lot of the code block events maintain their old code block event name. So we'll then type pre-start to get our pre-start where we do our event connection. And then we can type connect code block event. This, oops, Control C. This dot entity says it's going to come from self. The event is the code block events dot trigger entered by object. So it is, oh, it is entity enter trigger. Nice. Good to know that they named that nicely. Entity enter trigger. Let's go ahead and rename that to entity enter trigger. There it is. And then we can pass that along by doing parentheses, entity, entity, and then arrow function, curly braces, entity enter trigger. Pass the parameter entity, semicolon for the like semicolons, and now we've got this going. We just want to do console.log to let us know that it's working, and then we'll say sellable entered trigger. There we go, and Control save. All right, so we got our cell trigger set up. We now need to select the trigger and attach the script. So drop down, find the cell trigger script. There it is. And with that set up, clear the console. Go ahead and hit play, jump into preview mode, and we'll grab our orange, walking over. We then see the sellable entered trigger. There it is. All right, so then going to stop the world again, find my way back to the world. There it is. And now that we've got that sellable trigger working, we can start doing the other things that you might remember from those old tutorials, like removing the item from the player's hand and all that good jazz. I'm going to quickly read the comments and see if you guys have any other questions while we're rolling on this one, because that was a lot. Okay. White Sword says, is your AI texture tool back? I haven't checked, is it? Let's see. I don't think so. It's been out, so I feel like somebody messed something up, and eventually it's going to come back. I don't know. Yeah, it appears to be gone still, so unfortunately that is the case. Himeth says, how do you change the color of effects? Depending on the effects, some of them have that option and some of them don't. Okay, let's, I'll show you a quick example of this. Not this one, we want to go to the assets dropdown. There's a new effects section, VFX. And if you pull out one of my favorites that I think is really cool is dust. And inside of dust, you're going to find pollen. And if you go into pollen, I'm going to show you how I set this up to look like snow. So first, we're going to turn on looping and click play, just so we can start seeing it. And there it is. It looks like pollen. It doesn't look like snow yet. So to make this look like snow, we need to start adjusting the custom effects properties. So the first thing we're going to do is change the size of the area in which it is spawning. So let's change that to 32. We'll do a Y of maybe 10 and another Z of 32. There we go. And then the color we can adjust from here. The particle density I'll set to 500, and the speed I'm going to set to maybe a 1. And then we'll hit stop and then play, and we should see a whole thing of snow. Snow is everywhere. Yep. And this will be a lot easier to see if we make it nighttime. So let's go gizmos, pull out the environment gizmo. I like to move this to 0, 0, 0, like a lot of stuff in my worlds. And now that that's at 0, 0, 0, we can change it from daytime to midnight black. And there you go, that's snow. That's pretty cool. I find that's just really nice, but to make it look a little bit more like snow, I like to adjust the color as well. And so going down to the color, we can make it blue. So I believe this is the alpha property. So let's try making that 0.5. It wants a 0 at the beginning of that. 0.5. And then this is the blue, so if we take this to 0.7, and then this one to 0.7, that should return, we'll hit stop and play, a light blue, and play. We should now see partially transparent, ooh, those are not the colors I was looking for. Maybe the first one is transparency. Would that explain why it looks like that? How does this color work? What happened? Let's go 0, 0, 0. Oh, one of these is alpha. So stop. Oh, they look blue now. Stop and play. Didn't realize I could change them dynamically like that. Let's try turning this one back to 1. Stop and play. Does this color tell us what it is? It doesn't. So it has 4 properties, which is part of the problem. So one of those is alpha. I think that last one might be, but I'm not sure. That's quite nice, actually. Those being super blue is actually really nice. 0.5. 0.5 made them look purple, I thought. Stop. And wait for those to kind of fade out and hit play. And yeah, those look a little bit softer white now, which is kind of what I was going for. And then we jump into preview. And there you go. Kind of some nice looking snow. And that'll fill the whole world. I don't know the capacity limit of this. Haven't tried pushing it too far. You'll notice it does use a radius of 32, which is strange. But as you can see, that does create like a sphere. So you could make it bigger if you needed to and all that jazz. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And it is based on the center of it, so like, yeah, anyway. It also goes below the world is what I'm trying to say. It's down here too. So you might need to slide this up to get the full advantage of how it works like that. And then you get the height of it too, which is just crazy. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, cool. We did effects, but not all effects get that option. So if you go to the gizmos, a lot of the visual effects from the original VFX do not have that option. So if we go to like particle effects here, they don't have the ability to change color, which kind of stinks. So if we went to like water splash would be a great one to try and make like look like blood, but you can't because it's stuck at blue. You can, however, change the trail effects color, but you cannot change it via code. So it's stuck like this once you create it, which has its own limitations. Kind of curious if there is a good one for blood now. Just be aware that gore is going to get you potentially marked as an adult-only world. So if you're okay not having kids in your world, which could be a big devastation to any sort of monetization options that you're interested in, be aware of that. Let's go to water and see what water splashes they have. Water, a lot of water options. Snow, splash, play. I remember these looking too realistic last time I looked at them. Hit play. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Actually, let's change the scale of this to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. Please don't change the scale of the effect. Nice. Okay, custom effects properties. Change the color to be the opposite, 1 and 0.2 and play. Nice. We're heading to orange, so 0.1. Play. Yeah, that could be a hit when you're playing like a game, right? Play. Can we get that more dark red? 0. I'm not a big gore person, but like I'm kind of curious, right? Maybe try a 0.5 because it wasn't possible before, so you know. Oh, there's a foam color, so there's 2 different colors. That's interesting. I'm kind of curious what this last property does. If we set that to 0, oh, that is definitely the opacity. 0.5. It's just, that looks purple to me, not red, which is strange. Is it magenta, cyan, magenta, CMYK colors? Cyan? No, that would be cyan. No, so this is definitely the red property. Curious. You'll have to play with it some. It might be tinting it, so it might be like a blue by default, so you're tinting it, which is what makes it purple. Anyway, kind of curious. I'm going to hit delete for now, but you can definitely play around with that on your own and check those out. Okie dokie. So now that we've got that set up, let's go back to daytime. Go to, let's grab the wrong thing. Environment gizmo, back to daytime, and we're going to go ahead and delete. Really don't want to delete it. Just stop it. Turn off looping, slide it up. That took too much work to delete. Yes, lots of different splashes to try. So that was just the one that I came across quickly. Okay, so next is we're working on the cell trigger. So jumping back in on that, sorry for the tangent. We've got it displaying when a sellable object comes in. And so now what we need to do is get that sellable object to make the player some money. And so what we need to do first is say the entity that entered the trigger dot force release, is that an option? Dot as parenthesis grabbable entity dot force release parentheses. So that's going to remove it from the person's hand. And we say entity dot visible dot set to false. And then we say entity dot collidable dot set to false. And then at some point you've got to reverse this to make it so that they can grab it again and find it again. So typically you'd make a tree that grows oranges and then you'd return it. We can do that potentially. I'll put it on the question mark, so I'll call it orange tree. That is definitely an option. Orange tree question mark. And then we need to increase their money. And to do that, we're going to say this dot world dot persistent storage dot set player variable parentheses. The player is the holder of the entity, so we say entity dot owner dot get. That should return the player who owns it, or the player who's holding it rather. And because of that, I'm actually going to move this up above before we force release it, which shouldn't have any effect, but just on the off chance, we'll do that. And then we need to know how much money they have. So let's first get their current balance. So we're going to say constant player equals, and then we'll do this bit here, Control X, Control V. Now we can use player here, player, And then we can say constant player balance equals, and then we can go to the same sort of thing, this dot world dot persistent storage dot get player variable parentheses for the player, and then we need to know what the variable is, and the variable is that one we created in the variable groups, and curious why that disappeared on us. Did I forget to add it to the world? That's quite possible. So click add, go to owned by me, scroll down to office hours, and then we can hit add to world. 3 dots, add to world, add, and that's where our money variable is. Nice. All right, we can then switch back to added to world, and then we got to create this office hours PPVs colon money. So right here for the variable, we type single ticks, office hours PPVs colon lowercase money. Now that's going to get the player's money, which should be 0. Oops, I put that in the wrong spot. That's supposed to go over here. Let's go ahead and copy that. Control C and Control V. And because we need this in 2 locations, and when I give you this script later, you're going to need to modify it, let's go ahead and create a variable, which we're going to say constant PPV. We'll call it the money PPV name, which equals, and then that value. There we go. Oh, and it's not a constant. We don't want it to change, so we'd say read only. When you're inside of a class, you use read only instead of constant. But then when you're inside of a method, inside of a class, you use constant, as you see here. Okay, so then we can now replace this with this dot, and then we want to get this dot money PPV name, which we will also put here. So if we ever change the name of this, we only have to change it in the one place. And then to set the player variable, we need to set it to be plus the amount. So let's add the amount right here. So we're going to say +1. So every item you sell is worth 1 money. And then when we set the variable, we just say comma, and then player balance. And like that, we've now set the player variable. We probably want to have a leaderboard to go along with that. So let's go quickly create a leaderboard to parallel it, which we'll call highest money. We'll call that most money, and create. And then I like to just duplicate, Control D, slide to the right, get that to look about nice. And then we can change this to most money. We'll call that wealthiest, I think is a better way to put it. Wealthiest players. And there we go. We'll then want to reference the most money variable. Perfect. And now in here we can increase the most money value. So we say this dot world dot leaderboards dot set score for player, and then the leaderboard name is most money. Got to make sure that matches. And then comma, the player that we're setting it for is the player, and then the score is the player's balance. So I say player balance. And we also need to reference, if we're going to override, we're going to set this to false. So if the player gets the highest money and then spends some of it, they still get to keep their leaderboard score for having the most money at a given time. Okay, so we've now force released it, set the visibility, set the collidability to false. It's no longer in their hand. Control save, and they've made their money. So with that, let's go ahead and duplicate a few of these oranges. Control D, and we're going to make this last one an apple, just for giggles. And so our apple has the same sellable gameplay tag, and then inside of it, if we select the sphere, we can change that to be red by removing the yellow. We want to make this kind of like a 0.9 red, so it's not super bright. Maybe a 0.1 on the extra colors here to give it just kind of a more natural color there. And then that looks pretty good. So now if I hit play, we now have 2 oranges and an apple. Very nice. Clear and preview. We're in the world. Currently don't have a score for wealthiest player. We'll then grab one of these oranges, walking over. We've just sold it, and we got an error. Oh, because we need to leave the world and come back. Although it did work over here, but there is a weird leaderboard bug where you have to leave the world and come back for leaderboards to work properly. So I'll go ahead and read the chat while we leave the world and come right back. All right, here we are. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. If you've just joined me, this is my office hours where I answer your questions. We take a look at coding. We can look at code blocks, TypeScript, or custom model import, or any other Horizon questions you have. I'm happy to answer. And feel free to use the chat. I've just been talking, so I'm just like, So let me take a sip. Very good. Okay, let's hop back in and see how this is coming along. And we're heading right back. Any second now. Also, if you hadn't heard this already, we'll be giving away all the scripts you see here. In the description, there's a link to the Vidyuu Asset Library where we upload every week's office hours scripts, so you can use them in your own worlds, which is pretty cool, and modify them to your heart's content. All right, so we've got this here. I've just realized we are still spawning 1,000 of these jump pads. Let's go lower that to 100. That's definitely going to cause lag in our world when I hit play, so that'll be better. We can also close out of these scripts that we're not using anymore. Okay, so we've got our most money, which is definitely the name of the leaderboard because it did update. We'll then hit clear, play, preview. That orange actually looks more like a lemon to me all of a sudden. Kind of weird. Anyway, sold it, nice. And no errors on the console this time, very good. That one's been sold as well. And we go over here, we can see that should go up to 3 any second. Come on, 3. 3? Well, I thought it was going to go up to 3. Still staying at 2. Go ahead and grab another one. It's possible that the ownership didn't transfer when I grabbed it. On one of them, at least. Did seem to work that time, though. But yeah, ownership should transfer when you grab an object. Guess we're not guaranteed. So if we're not guaranteed, what can we do? Well, I'll show you what we can do. We're going to create some data. So I like to create a data file. So we'll create a new script, which is going to be called cell trigger _data. And this is where we're going to store all the data we need to know about a given fruit. And so this is going to be storing a fruit map. So we're going to go say export constant fruit, lowercase, fruit map, or we're going to call this the sellable map. And the sellable map is going to have everything we need to know about a given entity. So we say entity, and then comma, and then we need to know a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to put curly braces there for now, and then parentheses. But now we need to go define what the bag of stuff is. And to do that, we're going to create another script, which is going to be called cell trigger _defs, which is where we're going to define it, so definitions. And we'll open up the definitions file, and then Command A, backspace, and then export constant, or excuse me, export type. And this type is going to be called sellable data. And so sellable data is going to be equal to a bunch of things. So the first thing we want to know is probably like the name. The item name is worth knowing, so name is a string. And then we need to know the player who's holding it, so we'll call that the holder, which is a player. And then we also need to know the price, or the value, which we'll call a number, and anything else. I think that's it for now. And we can change that later if we need to. So we'll replace these curly braces with the sellable data. It is exported. Sellable. I did something wrong. I see what I did wrong. Sorry. Sellable map equals new map of type entity with sellable data as the secondary value. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our sellable map created. And we can use that across all of our scripts, which then allows us to create the next thing we need, which is a sellable, so we'll call this sellable _entity. And so each entity that's sellable will need this script attached. And so the first thing I think we should do is make it so that one of these looks more like an orange. And so this one is our orange. This one will be our lemon. And to make this look more like a lemon, we're going to go inside the group, grab the sphere, change the color. Oh, interesting. This really does show it as being orange. Anyway, we'll change that to 1, which will make it yellow. And we can stretch this sphere out using the stretch tool on the green axes, and then slide that down until it's nicely set up. Looks good. Looks like it could go up just a hair. All right, that looks like more like a lemon. Could be a little bit skinnier and a little bit taller. That good? That seems pretty close. Might slide that down just a hair. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's our lemon. And then let's get the lemon set up first. Should be the easiest. So we attach the script sellable. There it is. And then we have to fill out the properties for the sellable. So if we go to the sellable script, should be right here. We are going to do all the things I do at first, which is deleting the HZ dots. Again, that's a personal preference. We'll then backspace the T, retype the T, click enter. Then we need to define the properties on the properties panel. So the first thing is the name of the item, which will be a curly braces type. And this is all just like stuff you have to memorize. Prop types dot string. So just kind of think of this as magic, the way that this works, but this is how you define properties on your properties panel. And so the default will be lemon, and then we'll comma after that. And then we need a couple more values, I think just one for now, which is the value of that item, which will be a prop type number, and that will default to 1. So you might have some sellable that's worth more than 1, but for now they're all going to be 1. And then we do need to set this value up on start. So on start, we're going to call the cell trigger data file, which cell trigger data, export constant sellable map. Sellable map, there it is. And then we're going to say dot set, and then we need the key, which is the item itself. So this dot entity is the key, and the value is curly braces. And I realize now that our cell trigger data needs to update the definition to be a holder can be either a player or undefined. And so if there is no one holding it, it's undefined. And so then here on start, we're going to need to define this data. So I also want to store this data locally, but I think I won't, just so that I can prove a point on how to use this. So we'll say curly braces, enter, semicolon, and then we have the name, which is props.name, and then comma, and then the value, which is props, oops, Control Z, props with an S, dot value, and then we need the player, or the holder, which is currently undefined, and comma, there we go, Control save. And now we've set up the sellable map with all the data. We just need to set the data on the lemon. So down here, we can now change it from lemon in 1. That's already set up for us, perfect. We'll then go to the orange, which didn't look orange enough, so I'll click on the sphere one more time to adjust this to be more orange by removing some of the green. So we'll say 0.2. And if I hit play, that should look more like an orange. And it does, that looks beautiful. All right, so now we got our orange here. This is a lemon, this is an orange. We need to attach the script. So we'll go ahead and attach the sellable item. And then we need to change this to be orange. And then the last one is our apple, which is labeled apple. The color was good. We'll attach the sellable script again. Change this to Control A apple. And there we go. Go ahead and hit clear and play. And now we've got our 3 sellable items. And they've all registered themselves into that sellable data map with the name of them. Now, when the player grabs them, we need to update who's holding them. And to do that, we're going to use pre-start again. And this is where we're going to connect the code block event from this dot entity. So we want to know when this entity is grabbed by a player. So we say code block events dot player grab start or something like that. Maybe it's grab start on grab start. There it is. And now we want to create a local grab start. So we'll say grab start. And that's received with 2 parameters, but we just need the player, so we'll just use player and type player, and then curly braces, and then on grab start, if we hover over it, it has 2 parameters, is right-handed and player, so we need to do another arrow function, so we type is right hand, comma, and then player, and then over here we do our arrow, arrow to the right, and then curly braces. Then we can call our local grab start, parentheses, passing just the player parameter since we don't need is right hand. And then I like semicolons, so I add a couple of those. So now when the player grabs the object, we want to update the holder, and we can do that by going to say constant sellable data equals sellable map dot get parentheses this dot entity. This will return the data. We can then say if the sellable data still exists, which it should, there's no reason it shouldn't since we don't delete it. We can then say sellable data dot holder, and then that will equal the player who grabbed us, or this object. Okay, so now that we've got this set up, we can now head to our sell trigger, which was having issues knowing who the player was, and we can now say when entity enters trigger, we want to get the sellable data now, so we're going to say constant sellable data equals, and then parentheses, or excuse me, sellable data map or sellable map dot get parentheses for entity that entered the trigger. And now that we've got our sellable data, we need to verify that it is valid. So we say sellable data. So if some other object is tagged sellable but doesn't actually have the script running on it, that could potentially be an error. We're then going to move all of this code up. So we'll just arrow that up and then delete the extra lines of code. And now we don't need the player anymore because that's inside of sellable data. And then we can replace this with sellable data dot holder. And you'll see this gives us an error as well. So we need to say sellable data is valid and, so ampersand, ampersand, then sellable data dot holder. So we're verifying that the holder is defined and the data is defined. And now that we've got that set up, I'm going to collapse this so I can see it better. Instead of adding 1, we're going to add sellable data dot value so that we can change the value as necessary. We can also copy this right here, Control Z, sellable data dot holder, and paste it wherever player was. And that has now been updated, so we can now have various prices. You could even do a pop-up, which I'll show you really quickly, is this dot world dot pop, or no, it's this dot UI, this dot world dot UI, world dot UI dot pop-up. It's kind of hidden, it's hard to find. Show pop-up for player, and then parentheses, we can then say the player, which is the sellable data dot holder. And then we need to show the text, which is going to be the name of the item. So we'd say sellable data dot name. So that item was sold. We'd say item space sold for, and then space, and then we can do plus sellable data dot value. So we tell the player how much they sold it for, and then do an exclamation point at the end. And then we can do a break to break to the second line, and then say new balance colon, and then the new balance will be the, so space plus the player balance, so we can tell them what their balance is. And we usually want to make this in a smaller print, so I'll do size equals 2, and then we do need to adjust the pop-up defaults. And so comma, display time will set to 4 seconds, and the options, I think I'm going to leave that blank for now, and just so I don't have to do too much extra work. But let's go see that pop-up work and all the other things working. Should be kind of cool. All right, clear, and play. And this is the main reason I never went back to code blocks, is because this ability to create data files and just have it available everywhere. Lemon sold for 1. It's too big of text, so to shrink the text size down, we do need to adjust the properties, but we might be able to get away with doing something like this. If we say, right at the beginning, another plus symbol, and then single ticks, another single tick, we then take size equals 3, and then change this to size equals 1, Control C. Let's see what that looks like. Give that a second to run. Clear, clear, and play, preview. Running over here, I just want to see my balance is 4, so we can make sure that this is updating still. So we grab a lemon, run it in, lemon sold for 1, new balance 5. So yeah, I guess you can get away with apple sold for 1, Nice. Orange sold for 1. You can get away with doing all of that inside of this. So if we change size to 2, it's going to look a lot better. But you really do want to do properties. And so I guess I should demonstrate this. So we'd say comma, curly braces, and then I'm going to put these options below. And so we need to get the pop-up options, which I don't know them off the top of my head. So to see what the pop-up options are, we're going to go to Types, go to Horizon Core, and then Command F, we're going to search for pop-up options. And here they are. We can now just copy and paste these, Control C, and close out of this, and paste them right here. Now, Shift-Alt-F, this is upset because first of all, they're the wrong value, but it's also supposed to be a comma. And so I'm going to change all these to commas first, and then we'll update the value. Comma, comma, and comma. So the position we're going to set to be vec3.0. Vec3, make sure to click enter, .0. And then the font size we said was 2, so we'll change that to 2. The font color, make sure to backspace and click R. Color is going to be we'll just go with default of black, but then the background we could change to another color. So we might try blue. It's not going to look good, but it's something. I'll show you how to make a new color. Here's a custom color. Do new color, parentheses, and then one color that I like is 0.2, 0.4, 0.75, something like that. I think that's like the Vidyuu blue almost. Just trying to remember it off the top of my head. Play sound, I like to set that to true so you get more effects, and then show timer, set that to false, Control save. And now that should be a much better looking pop-up. And then clear. And I usually put this definition for what pop-ups should look like in a file somewhere so I can just import it rather than having to retype that every time. Go ahead and hit play, jump into preview mode, grabbing this lemon, putting it in. Lemon sold for 1, New Balance 8. Nice. That looks a lot better. I'm kind of curious. Can I set the size of this to 1.5? The position needed to go down, so this vec3, we might try vec.down, Control save, and see how that looks. All right. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'm hoping this is interesting and it's helpful. Not seeing any questions, so I'm thinking it must be enticing or interesting, so that's probably a good sign. Jumping into preview mode now, walking over, grabbing our lemon, and oh, I think it's below the ground. I can't see the pop-up, so down by 1 was too much. So we're going to have to create a new vector. So we're going to type new vec3 parentheses 0, down by negative 0.5, 0. I haven't touched this ever since I brought in my values from code blocks. Like I took the values right out of code blocks and brought them in and put them in a file, and I've never touched it since. So this is me learning all over again. When I forgot to look at the color, or I guess we couldn't see it, so let's take a look. Play, preview, grab. Lemon sold for 1, New Balance 10. That's a lot closer to where I'd like it. That's pretty good. Apple sold for 1, New Balance 11. Nice. Okay, cool, 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 cool. Fantastic. And we can see our balance is definitely updating, so all of that is good. And, whew, okay, so that's selling an item. That took us the better part of an hour. So I don't think we're going to do buying items because that is a lot harder. You have to use asset spawning. We did show asset spawning. So from this, you could infer a lot of how to do it. And that might be a really good challenge for anybody who's watching this in the future who wants to try and like take on a hard scripting challenge to level up your skills. I think that would be worth doing. I feel like there's something I'm missing, but perhaps not. We have the name, we have the item, we sell it. Oh, we were talking about potentially having it respawn, but like, it's a lot of work. So I guess if you could imagine, this shouldn't be too hard to set up. If we grab this pedestal, which, by the way, we can actually change the color just by attaching that color object script, so that's kind of cool. And then changing that color to be whatever we want, like maybe 0.1, and maybe like a 0, and then maybe 0.2. Nice, maybe 0.05, 0.25. Maybe add a little bit of this, 0.2. Maybe bring this down to 0, change this to 0.1, and then 0.1. And then this color, I realize now, needs to have the brightness set to like 0.5. And then if I hit play, that should look really good. Yeah, that's nice. And then I can hit Control D. Maybe I should have made it green for like money. But anyway, this is going to be a tree trunk. So now we're going to change this one to be brown, which is going to be 1.5 or maybe like 0.35. And then 0, and then we change the brightness to be like 0.1, and that's a tree trunk, nice. And then change the scale. I think I saw a message come in. Moki says, it should keep me busy for a while. Nice. That's awesome, love it. Okay, so here is our tree, and a tree like this is usually gonna be round, so we're gonna pull out another shape, which is gonna be our sphere, which we'll put right there. And we'll slide that up. Maybe skinny this out a little bit. Skinny, skinny, skinny. And then this one needs to run the color script as well. And then we'll change that to be a nice green. So 0, 0, 0.5, refresh, so stop and play. That's still a little bright. Maybe change this to 0.5. There we go, and then grab the slider tool, Control D to duplicate, slide that up, scale this one down a little bit, and slide that maybe up a little bit like that, take that down a little bit. All right, now we got our little tree. Go ahead and hit stop, play. So we got a tree here. And you can imagine having a bunch of trees, but for us, we just have the one. I also wanted to scale this lemon down. It was way too big, scaling it down a little bit. But this is going to be our lemon, apple, orange tree, which is a real thing. I really want to own one of those one day, like manually making it. When I say own, I mean like I want to graft onto a tree all the different fruits. I think that'd be so cool. That like a pear, an orange, a lemon, and an apple growing on the same tree. Anyway, we're going to place these individually. Oopsie, close out. Select, drag this over, try to get that in a nice spot. Drag this one over. And these are definitely way too big, but you know, for the sake of just a quick little tutorial here today, not bad. Down, and our lemon will go over here, and over. There we go. Now we'll hit play, stop, play. There we go. There's our little lemon tree. Quite nice. And we can now grab those. So the trick is we want these to come back after like 30 seconds. So if we go to our sellable entity, we need to know we'll create another value called max delay return, which we're going to set to curly braces type colon prop types dot number comma default colon, and we'll set that to 30 seconds and then comma. And so these are going to return after around 30 seconds. And so we have to put that into our sellable data, as it would turn out. We could also send an event back to this, which is probably super appropriate too, but we're not going to worry about that. But we do need to know the origin position, so we're going to have to put that in our sellable data. So we're going to go to sell trigger defs and create two more values, which is the max return time colon is a number. And we also need to know the origin position, which is a vec3. And I guess we also need to know the origin rotation, which is a quaternion, and comma save. Okay, so now we've got a few more pieces of data we need to put in here. We're going to start filling that out. So the first one is that max return time colon props, Control Z, props with an S dot max return. I want to replace this with the exact same name. There we go. And then comma, we still need to know the origin position, which is this dot entity dot position dot get, parentheses, comma, and this, or then we need origin rotation, which is this dot entity dot rotation, which is down a couple, rotation dot get, parentheses, and comma, Control save. All right, so now that we've got that all set up, Now on our cell trigger, we need to make these things go back to where they're going. And we can do that right here. And so we can say if parentheses, I don't know, what we want to do is say async dot set timeout to cause a delay to happen. And then arrow function, we want to tell it what to do is inside those curly braces there. And then comma, the amount of time is going to be, let's start with a default time of 1 second. So 1,000 milliseconds. Well, we'll multiply it in a second. So we say 1 parentheses multiplied by 1,000, because there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second, and async uses milliseconds. So we say 1 second plus sellable data dot max return time multiplied by the math.random, and that's going to give us a random value between 0 and that time, which will then be added to that. And then I do want to use math.floor to make sure it's a whole number, math.floor, so it'll be a whole number in seconds. And yeah, that should do it. Okay, so that's the amount of time it's going to take. And then what we want it to have happen when this is done is we want the object to move back to its original position. So we're going to grab these two things here, Control C, Control V. And so we're going to set these back to true. Control C, Control V. And then we're going to say sellable data dot holder equals undefined, which we should really do up here, because that's a big part of this. Like, we just force released it, so it's now undefined. And then we want to take the entity dot position dot set to sellable data dot origin position, and entity dot rotation dot set to sellable data dot origin rotation. And that will move it back. It'll then set the visibility and collidability back, and it'll be ready to go back to being used over and over again. So that's a little dirty. I'd normally clean this code up by adding methods and just making it look a little bit better. Like, as an example, we could go down here and type return or return sellable to origin position, parentheses, curly braces, and then you move all of this into here. And then we just need the sellable data and the entity. So we say, it's interesting that it's not getting us an error. Oh, because this needs to go down one more. There it goes. And so we need to provide the entity, colon, which is a type entity, and the sellable data, which is a type sellable data. And now if we call that right inside these curly braces, we would then say return sellable to origin position, pass the entity and the sellable data, and that will then call this, which makes this a lot easier to read. I'd also probably do something like force release and hide sellable, and then parentheses and curly braces, and then we can take all of these down as well, alt arrow down. And so it just makes the script a lot easier to read. We then need the same parameters, so we'll copy these from here, Control C, Control V, and then right here where we had that before, we can now just call force release and hide sellable, parentheses, passing in the entity and the sellable data. And this one I said I would put in like a data file, so to like show you what that would look like, we'll just backspace this, Control X. We'll then put this here at the top of our, right here where we have definitions, and we'll say this was pop-up options, which was of type pop-up options. So we then say equals, and then, oops, ooh, I lost it. Darn it. Oh, darn it, darn it, darn it, darn it. I lost it. Control C, paste this on a different tab just so I don't lose it. Enter, Control V. Then back here, Control Z. I hit Control C rather than Control V. I misclicked by just a hair. Okay, and Control Shift Z. And Control Z, Control X. Okay, I just recut it. Now that I've cut it again, I can repaste it, which I'm going to do down here just real quick, Control V, and then I can copy this all back in, Control X, backspace, 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 Control Save, and paste that over here. Okay. Okay, so now we've got pop-up options being defined as a pop-up options, and then it's got all these properties, and then down here where we need it, we just type in this pop-up options, and then you can even do this globally and make a global version rather than having this be local, because this one is just local to this script, but it could be like an exported property somewhere, which you've seen a lot of already. Okay, there we go. So that's pretty heavily cleaned up. Yeah, nice, nice. All right. I feel like there was something else. What was I working on just a second ago? Sellable entity. Oh, the returning. Okay, so we got it returning. Maybe we just need to test it. Is it done? It might be done. Crazy. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, hitting play, jumping into preview mode, coming down over here, grabbing an apple, running it into the cell, sold for 1, grab an orange. And on desktop and mobile, you can only grab one at a time, so that kind of stinks if you're on mobile, but if you're in VR, you can do double. And look at the apple just came back, nice. And I'll grab the orange, or excuse me, the lemon, and there it is. And the orange is back. So maybe even setting a longer time, like a minute, might make sense, because it's random from 1 to 30. But yeah, that's nice. And then we can go, while we're waiting, play the jumping game. See if we can get a high score. And those could actually be like randomly reset. I think that would be really cool to show too. So if you weren't here for this earlier, we built this thing. It does look like occasionally it could get placed in a way that you wouldn't be able to make it to 1 because of the distance that we set. So the idea is, what if it's slowly updating itself? So if we go back to the platform script here, jump pad manager. Okay, so we did this place jump pad, and place jump pad spawns an asset. If we hover over this, this creates a promise which resolves with the list of the objects that were spawned. Now we have it grouped as a singular grouped object, so what we can do is say assets spawned is of type entity array, which equals an empty array. And then right here we place the jump pad, and we need to get this. So we say constant new asset equals, and that's going to give us the object that is spawned. But we have to use await. So we say await, and then we need to make this an async function. So we say async place jump pad, which allows us to use await, which allows us to wait for promises. And so nothing will run and like be below this until after this has finished waiting for the asset to spawn. And so then we can say assets spawned dot push parentheses new asset, and now we've added that to the array. And then this is upset because it might, oh, we need to use item 0 because it returns an array of items in case you have multiple items in your asset, but we just have the one, so it's the item at index 0, so that works. Okay, so now that that's set up, we can create a looping event called place loop. And the place loop is going to do this for loop that we did earlier. And then on start, we're going to cause this to go every 1 minute. So every 1 minute, it's just going to swap. So you've got 1 minute to make it to the top. You can change it to be whatever time you want, but we'll just do async dot set interval parentheses, and then we're going to go arrow function, curly braces, place loop, parentheses, semicolon, because I like semicolons. The delay on this is going to be 60 seconds, so 60_000 is a great way to demonstrate that it's 60 seconds because it's in milliseconds. So underscores aren't required. You could do it like this, but it's way easier to read and they don't affect anything. Okay. So now that we got the place loop running every minute, we need to clear out the previous assets. So we need to say assets spawned dot for each parentheses asset. Then we can say arrow function, curly braces, and now we need to delete this asset that's been spawned. So then we say this dot world dot delete asset, parentheses asset, and now that's going to delete the asset, and then after we're done deleting all the assets, we can say the assets spawned equals an empty array, and then we can start spawning the next one and press Control Save. Now this is a promise, so we could do an await, which would cause this to delay. I don't think a for each loop will delay though. Yeah, for each loops will not work with async stuff. You'd have to use a for loop for that. So we're just going to completely ignore that. Anyway, the point is this is going to be deleting while it's spawning. Could be kind of chaotic. Could be kind of fun for the user actually. So anyway, that's fun. And yeah, that does it. So now we can give that a shot. Clear. Kind of nervous. Play. Jump into preview mode. All right. So those assets should be spawning around us somewhere. Oh, something's wrong. Oh. So set interval doesn't call it immediately. So it waits 60 seconds before calling the first one. So we need to call place loop first. There we go. Control Save. And then call the interval after that. Nice. Give that a second. You flow like water. Thank you. I think. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go. Ooh, is there no way I'm going to get there? Can I? Oh, whoa. Okay, cool. Didn't know I could touch the bottom of those. Oh, yep, there it is. Okay, that's cool to know. That's actually kind of a cool feature. You can make the pad thicker if you don't want that feature. Oh, save me. Okay, so any second, we're going to see this reload below us. So I'm going to see how high I can get. And I'm trying to find my next jump to location. There we are. Any second now, this is all going to disappear. Oh no, I'm falling. No. Okay, we're going to look up then. This should be any moment we're going to see these all despawn and a whole new set spawn in. Any second. I should have put a timer in the console so I could see this. Oh, there it goes. All right, new ones should be spawning. Kind of shocked that I don't see anything coming in. Curious. Yeah, that's very curious. Okay. Let's check the code and see if there's anything obvious. The async place jump pad is happening async, so that could be part of the problem. So let's actually use a for loop instead of a for each loop, so that way we can use async. And so we're going to say for let I equal 0 while I is less than the assets spawned dot length, and then I will represent the index. And we can delete all of this, backspace. We can then alt arrow this down. It definitely deleted all the assets, but we didn't have the ability to wait for it, which is why I think this might be the problem line of code. So now we say delete asset, which is from the assets spawned item at index I. Okay, so that's going to delete all the assets. And then we can now use await to await the deletion. We can then type an async here. And async is a pretty advanced feature, guys, so I didn't touch that for like 6 months. And if I did, I didn't know what I was doing. I've only recently become what I'd call mildly proficient. So here in this for loop, we have this async, but we need it to return a void promise. So we type promise void, and that should automatically return when it reaches the end of this. So we don't need to actually do anything. I don't think. I'm pretty sure we can just say await right here, and that's going to wait the end of each of these before doing the next one. And Control Save. That might work. Let's change the delay on this from 60 seconds down to 30, so that way we don't have to wait half as long. And that should help too. Okay. Hitting play. preview, and there's our first one, jumping. Here we go. Ooh, nice. Ooh, there we go. All right, we're gonna count down from like 15, I think, right now. Oh no, I missed it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That should be going any second now. There they go. Okay, they're gone, and we. Oh, and you can see they're going in order. That's interesting. That was very cool. And now we should see them place in order too, which is interesting. But they're not placing. Okay, I'm suspecting we might be reaching some other issue, where maybe the capacity meter is stopping us. Like maybe when we spawn them in, it spawns them in so fast that the capacity meter hasn't updated, and then it does 100 and it's like, dude, that's too many things. And so it's like, I can't spawn them in. So I'm thinking, let's change this to be after a brief delay. So we say, delay placement, parentheses, curly braces, and then move this into here, alt arrow down into the delay. We'll need to make this async if we want to use the await, which seems safe enough. And then it's not really required though. Yeah, it won't be required. So we're going to delete that now. And we'll no longer do async on the placement. We can then use async to delay the placement by just a moment to give it time for this to update potentially the capacity meter, because there is a capacity limit. You just don't hit it very often. It's usually with animated objects that you'll start hitting those limits. So we're going to delay this by 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to call the delay placement. Now this is where I'm going to undo a bunch of this before I share this code with you guys and we wrap today up. But I just want to see if this would actually work. I need parentheses there. Control save. Because I suspect that's the issue. I somehow lost the place jump pad. Kind of curious what I accidentally deleted. I don't know when I deleted that, but I accidentally deleted that at some point. Okay. Clear. And play. Okay, so if I had a lot of time, I would change this to be, that went pretty good. Do we lose the bottom one? Oh, this is the error from the first time, isn't it? We call this first, yeah. Needs to place the jump pad, then increase the height. Ooh, wait. Oh, wait. Never mind. There was no problem there was no problem at all. Control Z. I figured it out. The Y height was the problem. If you caught that, good job. If you didn't catch that, I didn't either. So right here, the Y height needs to be reset right here. So we say this dot Y height equals 0, because I forgot to reset that value before starting this whole loop. Cool. So we might not have needed to do any of the awaiting. Let's first see it work. I'm going to change this to 15 seconds just to start seeing this. Maybe 10 seconds. Control save. And then, yeah, that's going to work this time. Darn it. I hate when it's something simple because I did all this extra work. But maybe you learned something about await and async and stuff. So that's cool. Being wrong on live stream is like the worst thing that can happen to you because there's no fixing it. It's like no going back. It's just locked permanently, which is okay. I'd rather show myself making errors to, oh, look at there they go. And new ones are coming in, right? Oh, no, they're there. Okay. Oh, because it was async, it took a second to catch up, but then the delay is so long that it doesn't ever, got it, okay. Let's get rid of the async since we no longer need it. Async going bye-bye. Place loop will just happen instantaneously, which should be a lot better. Control save. And we don't need to do a void promise here. Delete that. Control save. Okay. I think that's good. I think that's very good. Clear, play, preview, 10, 9, 8, 7. Ooh, nice. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And it should just instantly go away and instantly come back. Boom, gone, and then they come in. So you get like 3 seconds if you're playing this as a game to like figure it out as you're falling. You're like, oh no, oh, and they're gone, like right, just like that. Okay, 10, 9, I want to actually get like a demo in here. Let me see if I can jump on this one. Come on, hit it. Oh no, can't reach it. Oh, they're gone. Okay, next time. Next shot. Oh wait, is my controller working? I feel like I'm getting stick drift on my keyboard. What the heck? Okay, I might have just been hitting the wrong key. There we go. There we go. Oh no, it's too far away. Okay, I can't get high enough, but it is working pretty consistently, no problems. Pretty cool. I would, again, set that back to 60 seconds, and I'll ship it like that to you. That's cool. That's cool. Whew. Well then, here we are. Done for the day. I can't believe it. It's been another Office Hours with Laex05. Great to have you guys. I'm opening the scripts folder to go and upload those to you right now. Hello. Oh my goodness gracious. That was fun. I know we didn't get to world streaming. To be completely honest, I think Moki was the one who asked for that, or maybe it was Buho. I can't remember. One of you two. I haven't done world streaming. It's something I've played with this much. I've done like 4 or 5 lines of code. I could probably show you it, but I wouldn't know what I was talking about. I wouldn't be very well versed, at least. So it's something I'd love to come back to. It's something I have implemented in a world that my team is working on, aka Euphoria. He's building a world that has world streaming in it. So that's cool. I should go ask him. I told him it's his project. He's got to learn it. So at some point that'd be cool to learn. The buying stuff could be something we could talk about next week. If you want to ask that question again next week, we can definitely go into that a little bit further. Man, that was fun. Okay, so now I'm going to give you guys those files. We're going to go ahead and get that over. So if you go into the description, you'll see a link. Let's see if I can find it on this stream settings. Let's see. Oh, I shouldn't show this. I don't know. I don't know where it is. Where's the description of the video? Okay, you guys should have a description. I don't, so I'm going to just go to studio.youtube.com because that's where I know there's a description. Go to content, go to title and description, and grab the asset link. So you're going to find this in every latest video. We have these assets, and there's a lot of good stuff in there for you to use in your worlds. Go open that up. Here we are. And there they are. And then inside of here we have office hours, and I need to make sure I'm in the right account, which I am. We're going to create a new folder for today. So new folder, today's date is 2025-01-31. There we are. And we'll go ahead and jump into that folder, and then I'm just going to drag these files in. So we did the color object script, highest jump pad script for a leaderboard. Man, we did a lot of cool scripts today. I would love to see you guys take these and expand upon them. Or break them apart, learn from them, whatever you need to do. Super happy to be able to share them with you. And I can't wait for next week. And then we're going to have a week off for Valentine's Day. So we'll go next week and then a week off. And then, I'm scared to show you my schedule. Let's see. And then I'm not sure because I'm going to be traveling. I don't know if we're going to do the 28th. We'll see what happens. But definitely next week and then 2 weeks from then. Cannot wait for more. All right, guys. I will catch you then. See you next Friday. What are you typing? I don't know. My favorite animal is... Okay, they asked me this. I don't do favorites. This is the problem, okay? I don't do favorites, but the capybara is pretty great. Can't say that's not true. So that's the one I answered for when Meta asked me that question in their little interviewee thing. The one where it ends with me chugging a bubbly water. All right, guys. Till next time.